All right, let's jump right in and go beyond the big headlines of India's 2026-27 expenditure budget. Today, we're diving deep into the real engine room of the economy, industry, and commerce. This is where the government is placing its biggest bets on growth, and we're about to see exactly where that money is going, and more importantly, what it's supposed to do. Behind every single number we're going to talk about today, there's this one big idea: Viksit Bharat. And this isn't just some catchy phrase, right? It's the actual strategic blueprint for a developed India. It's all about aiming high with the economy while making sure that growth actually reaches everyone. This vision is the why behind all the numbers we're about to unpack. And believe me, they are putting some serious cash behind that vision. I mean, look at that. That is the total amount set aside just for the commerce and industry sector. It's an absolutely huge number, and it screams that this is a top priority. But the real question is, where is all that money actually going? So, to make sense of that massive number, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture, kind of the 30,000-foot view of the funding. Then we'll zoom in on the two key departments that are actually handling the money. From there, we'll see which specific schemes are getting funded, how this all lines up with past policy promises, and finally, and this is super important, how we'll know if any of this is actually working. All right, let's get started with that big picture. This is really the foundation of the government's whole economic game plan for the industrial sector. Now, let's start breaking down that huge total amount. See, the thing is, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry isn't just one giant bucket of money. It's actually split into two very powerful departments, and as you're about to see, they have very, very different jobs. Okay, now this is where the real story is. On the screen, you've got the two main departments. Now look at that capital column. Think of revenue as the money to keep the lights on, salaries, maintenance, day-to-day stuff. But capital, that's the exciting part. That's the money for building new things, factories, infrastructure, assets for the future. The Department of Commerce gets about 47 crore in capital. But look at DPIIT, a whopping 5,119 crore. That huge gap tells you everything about where the government's priorities are. And that right there, that tells you the entire philosophy of this budget. This isn't just about paying the bills for this year. That massive capital investment in DPIIT is a clear strategic bet on building the very backbone of the future economy. We're talking infrastructure, factories, and technology that will pay off for decades to come. All right, so we know which department gets the cash, but what are they actually doing with it? Let's move from those abstract budget lines to the real-world projects that are designed to get the economy humming. Okay, one of the biggest pieces of this puzzle is something called the Production-Linked Incentive Program, or PLI for short. This is pretty much the government's main tool to get companies to make more stuff in India, which helps cut down on imports and gives our own industries a major boost. And what's really cool is how targeted this is. This isn't just spraying money everywhere and hoping for the best. They're making specific strategic bets. That massive 2,250 crore for pharma, that's a bet on turning India into the world's pharmacy. The 380 crore for specialty steel, that's a bet on building the high-tech materials we need for all kinds of advanced manufacturing. It's about picking winners and giving them a serious push. So it's not just about incentivizing specific products. The budget is also about building the actual places where those things get made. We're talking about huge, modern industrial infrastructure. And wow, look at this number, 3,000 crore. That's going to something called the National Industrial Corridor Development and Implementation Trust. The goal here is pretty simple, actually. Build these incredible plug-and-play industrial zones all across the country. They come with top-notch logistics and connectivity, making it way easier and cheaper for a business to just come in, set up, and start growing. Now, this budget isn't just stuck in the past with traditional industries. It's got one eye firmly planted on the future. And a huge part of that is investing in the high-tech sectors that are going to be critical for the next wave of economic growth. And there's no better example than this: 1,000 crore for the India Semiconductor Mission. I mean, these tiny chips are literally the brains inside everything we use, from our phones to our cars. This investment is a massive strategic push to build our own capacity and stop relying on other countries for something so incredibly vital. Okay, so we've seen a lot of big numbers, but is this just throwing money at problems, or is there a real coherent plan here? Well, in this next part, we're going to connect the dots and see how promises from the past are being funded today. This slide really connects the dots for us. On one side, you have the promise, a policy goal from the last budget cycle about boosting domestic manufacturing. And on the other side, you have the proof in this year's budget. Real money going to the exact PLI schemes and industrial corridors needed to make that promise a reality. It shows they're following through. Now for the billion-dollar question, or in this case, the 70,000 crore rupee question. With all this money being spent, how do we, the public, actually know if it's working? This is where we talk about accountability. Well, the answer is a bit of a mouthful. It's called the Output Outcome Monitoring Framework, or OMF for short. Basically, it's a system that says, don't just tell me how much money you spent. Tell me what you did with it. That's the output. And what actually changed because of it. That's the outcome. It's all about tracking real-world results, not just spending. Okay, that sounds good in theory, right? But let's see how it works in the real world with an actual example straight from the budget documents themselves. Okay, so take a look at this. It's for a GST refund scheme. First, you've got the financial outlay. That's the budget, about 724 crore. Then the output. What did they actually do? Well, they made 464 new industrial units eligible for the refund. And finally, the outcome, the so what. The result was that 724 crore in cash was pumped directly back into those businesses as liquidity. See? It's a crystal clear line from spending to a measurable result. All right, so let's wrap this all up. What are the big takeaways here? First, there's a huge, undeniable focus on making more things in India, driven by those PLI schemes. Second, there's a massive investment in building the long-term infrastructure, like those industrial corridors. Third, it's not just about today. There's a strategic push into high-tech, like semiconductors. And finally, and maybe most importantly, there's a clear system in place to actually track the results. So the money is there, the plan seems to be there, which leads us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. With all this investment and strategy in place, what do you think is the single biggest hurdle that India's industries now have to clear to make that Viksit Bharat vision a reality? Is it skills? Is it global competition? Something else entirely? It's something to think about.